angry!
Why are you angry, Mary?
I am angry that a reboot of a show that is 30 years old is nothing like the show that is 30 years old. I'm going to make a rage video complaining about the new reboot before seeing a single episode or more than 30 seconds worth of the animation and shout to the world about how it's going to be the worst animated reboot ever.
Okay then, I'll be here making a video about how it's actually a good thing and how we shouldn't judge until after we actually see an episode of the reboot. You know, do something a bit more coherent.
Blasphemy! How dare you have a different opinion from me?
Well, looks like after 30 years of waiting, Thundercats are finally on the move again. For many fans of Thundercats, they are not feeling the magic. They are roaring though. The Thundercats are loose again, but this time they look more like cute little kittens than full-fledged, muscle-pulsing cat people. Of all shows that were in desperate need of a reboot, it's Thundercats. Okay, maybe not desperate need, but more of a desperate want. Oh wait, that already happened in 2011. Why did they cancel that again? Well, for me, it wasn't different enough to be its own thing, and didn't have the comedy that the original did. It may have been too dark and complicated to appeal to children. It didn't have much comedy to take the edge off. Reboot a show and do nothing new, no one really cares, and the show is cancelled. Cut to 7 years later and Thundercats is getting another reboot that is changing pretty much everything, and everyone is losing their minds! So what's so bad about this reboot? Oh, are people complaining that it's not like the original show? Oh, the humanity! How dare a reboot the thing they're rebooting and make it nothing like the show it's rebooting? Come on guys, let's get real here. Thundercats is a show that is beloved by many, including myself, because of its rock and roll vibe, the hybrid of fantasy meets science fiction, and of course the sexy comic book character designs. Come on, let's not glance over this. Most of us watched it because of how damn sexy the characters were. And thus, a generation of furries were born! Though, admittedly, that probably started with them rests from the Star Trek animated series. Meow indeed. Lionel, the leader of the Thundercats, is a 12-year-old boy trapped in an adult body due to his capsule malfunctioning, slowing down the aging process instead of stopping it. So, the show also had a theme of puberty, maturity, and mystery, hence the underlying themes of sexual confusion and tension. As badass as this show was, it hasn't aged well, and re-watching it now, it's clear to see how this show would not appeal to modern audiences as much as it did in the 80s. So let's take off our nostalgic rose-tinted goggles for a moment and look at this coherently. A lot has changed in the animation industry in 30 years in both literal and figurative senses, and with it, the audience has also changed. Audiences expect sophisticated storylines, stylistic and high-quality animation, deep character plots, and fanfic shipping fuel. Back in the 80s, television animation was still shaking the dust of the 70s off its feet, needing to prove to the masses that animated cartoons can be more than 7 minutes of puns and slapstick, and also be more than just 20-minute long advertisements for toys. Animation was done as cheap as possible, relying more on still action poses with a highly stylized comic book look to give the impression of weight and movement, much like Japanese anime. It can look awkward, clunky, and cheap at times, and can feel more like a radio show with animated comic book panels instead of an actually fully fledged animated show. Compare this Thundercat to the reboot and it's understandable why fans are roaring, and not in a good way. True, this reboot is not the show we know and love. It's cute, pudgy, and not sexy. At all. It feels more pop-funk than heavy metal rock and roll, not unlike a certain other science fiction fantasy show that surprised most animation fans, including myself. Steven Universe was a show that started life as an awkward science fiction comedy that took a while to find its feet, but once the story started to unfold, it showed how animation can pull off drama as well as comedy without sacrificing its unique artistic style. If anything, the juxtaposition of the visual style of Steven Universe and the dramatic storyline works in its favour. Perhaps this reboot of Thundercats will do the same, who knows? But Steven Universe was an original series, not a reboot, so it had nothing to live up to other than compete with other shows of a similar genre. The problem with any reboot is that it is constantly compared to the original and how different it is. In my book, remakes, reboots, different reiterations are fine, as long as they stay respectful to the source material and reinvent the story and characters to suit a modern audience, without losing or sacrificing the integrity of the original show. And before we see an episode, we can't decide if this new reboot will achieve that or not. But sometimes a whole fresh new look can be exactly what a franchise needs to be reborn. Case in point, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Although of course a fresh new look also comes packaged with a new tone that may be a slap to the face of fans of the original show. Teen Titans Go, for example. On its own, Teen Titans Go is not a bad show. It's got some badly written episodes, but it's not a bad show. But as a Teen Titans show, it's bad. But let's not make that the only reason to hate a show. That would be really unfair. DuckTales 2017 has managed to find a new audience while still managing to keep its original audience. The show feels and looks more like the comics do, or did, and has made the changes it needed to in order to reinvent itself without taking it too far. Like with any reboot, you can get it really right and the stars align. Or you can get it really wrong and make the universe implode. Or, just make a bunch of nerds make rage videos about how awful the remake is without actually seeing a single episode. Come on, guys, grow up. I think what has most fans upset, though, is, well, it's not sexy. Come on, you're all thinking it. Thundercats' main appeal was how sexy the characters were, and that's just nowhere to be seen here. The original series animation and look was closer to Japanese anime than Western cartoons. Likewise, the reboot in 2011 had an anime vibe to it, much like Avatar: The Last Airbender had. Another example of a remake done right is Voltron. For me and many other fans, Thundercats should have had a reboot more akin to the Voltron reboot. So if you want an animated science fiction series with cats in space, well, you've already got Voltron for that. Fans seem to forget how humorous and silly Thundercats was. Has some artistic flair been lost here? Perhaps. To me, this is giving off a Steven Universe meets Adventure Time vibe. It may initially look like a fan-made parody of the original show, but who knows? This may deliver exactly what the creators promise, something the 2011 reboot failed to do. A comedy sci-fi action show that is a love letter to the original. We shall see. I'm Mad Munchkin. Stay creative.